Welcome to RevMD, the podcast all about medical billing. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Signorelli. Join us as we break down the ins and outs of medical billing, discuss the latest trends, and also share insights to help you and your practice navigate the world of healthcare finances. Welcome back to another week of the RevMD podcast. This week, we're going to talk all about a new code coming out for Medicare in January. So it is live as we speak after January 1st, 2024. This is the code G2211, which is all about an add-on code on your E&M services that really helps compensate physicians for the additional work required in basically coordinating care for those complex or serious conditions. What is interesting about this code is it actually was supposed to come out in 2021 by Medicare, but it did get delayed. Congress actually mandated this delay until the beginning of 2024. So it is here, it is live, and today we're going to talk all about the G2211 add-on code. Hopefully, this is a code that you're going to be able to use in your practice if it makes sense for the patients that you're seeing and helps you increase your revenue some. All right, so what exactly is G2211 code? So this code essentially describes visit complexity inherent to an evaluation and management that's associated with medical care that basically serves as the continuing focal point of needed healthcare services. So I know that that's coming from CMS coding, and sometimes that doesn't all make sense. So basically, in short, it's an add-on code for evaluation and management visits that are part of an ongoing longitudinal care relationship. And we'll talk about a few examples of these, but it's basically an add-on code that can be used separately in addition to an office outpatient E&M visit for both new and established patients. So today we're going to go over the nuances regarding this code. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the areas when you can't use the G2211 code, and then we'll talk a little bit about how to implement and a few clinical scenarios. So important things to note is that this code was added to the codes that you can use for telehealth services, meaning if you do an E&M telehealth service, you can still use this add-on code and basically allows for both telehealth and audio-only services. So that's good news. So this is just, again, another one of those codes that you can use as an add-on code. It is expected that, this code is going to be utilized with about 30 to 40% of your E&M codes. And I think that's what CMS is expecting and maybe increasing over time. Now, CMS has very specific guidelines outlining when this cannot be used. And that is essentially when you're using an E&M service that you're going to have with a modifier 25. Meaning, okay, so say you do an E&M service with a modifier 25 on top of an annual visit. So you've got already an E&M with a modifier 25. You're not going to want to also then add on the G2211 code. So if anytime you're using an E&M service with a modifier 25, that is not going to be the time to use this add-on code. And that's really because they're stating that, the fact that you already have two types of either procedures or visit, reasons going on, you're not going to then add on this third. It is also expected to be reported in conjunction with E&M services that really involve ongoing care related to a patient's single serious condition or a complex condition that you are managing over time. So you really have to make sure two things are happening. One, obviously, you're documenting, that longitudinal or complex nature of the clinical condition, but then you're also making sure that those ICD-10 codes match that, right? So if you don't have either of those things, then that's just basic coding. You can run into a situation where this may be denied or where they may ask for medical records. The other thing that's important is this cannot be reported without an E&M code for the same date of service, right? So this is an add-on code. So you drop the E&M, whether that's a telehealth E&M or an in-office. It can be new patient, it can be established patient, but then you're going to drop this code. It's not expected that this is going to be a very high revenue generator, but every little dollar counts. I think this is reported to be in the $14 range for reimbursement by CMS. Other things is you're going to want to avoid reporting this code for encounters with patients not undergoing ongoing care for a single separate serious condition or complex condition for a problem that is transient or potentially transient in nature. So that's really important to understand that this is really about those longitudinal complex cares or care conditions that you are managing over time. So if we think about how we're going to implement this in your office, I think it's really, really important that all of the physicians, all of the clinical staff need to receive, some training and some documentation and communication related to this. And we will have a blog post about this topic on our website. So if you head over to nationalrevenueconsulting.com, we'll put this in a blog post so that you can get this to all your staff or send them the recording. Really important to kind of touch in with your billing teams that say, hey, we're going to start using this code. I know that for our own team, we're going to be sending out education to all of our billing teams to make sure they're all aware of the code. And really want to make sure that, if you have anybody scrubbing your claims or, practice management software updates, that those are done and uploaded to your system so that this code is available to use within your software. So you may want to reach out to your software vendor if that's not something that's automatically done every year. Now, the important things that you're going to want to really make sure that everybody understands is this is a new CPT code, right? It's an add-on code. It's live as of January 1st. And this is an add-on code that is listed separately in addition to an office E&M code, and that this should not be used with an E&M service when you're using a modifier 25. This is a code that is specific for Medicare claims, and that it is not a guarantee that other payers are going to reimburse for this code. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that plays out over the next year. And the other important thing to understand is that it can also be used for a telehealth visit. And again, that reimbursement, I believe, is in the range of $14 to $16. And so those are super important things for the staff to understand, for the physicians to understand. And now we're going to talk a little bit about some clinical scenarios with regards to using this code. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about some clinical scenarios that may warrant this. And I think it's important to really kind of center on this HCPCS code that this is really about when the practitioner has or intends to have a long-term ongoing relationship to care for this specific condition of a patient. So you really want to think about, making sure that this is not a simple, virus that you're treating, not a simple allergy, visit or something that is acute in nature and, something that happens one time. This is really about something that is complex that you're managing week after week after week. So some examples that some of the professional society guidelines have, kind of started to come out with their own guidelines. I know the rheumatology and cardiology teams also published some documents in regards to this. So some examples in the rheumatology world are, an example with a patient who's established with RA and gout. And so say that, visit qualified for a 99214, you could also add on that G2211 because it represents an established relationship with an ongoing longitudinal care related to a serious condition or, a complex condition, right? You got RA, you got gout, you've got medications, that's obviously longitudinal. That's something you're meeting and managing for that patient multiple times throughout the year. Another example would be for systemic lupus erythematosus. Obviously, another example where you could have potentially even a new patient that you're seeing and diagnosing systemic lupus erythematosus. And so you could have a 99205 and this add-on G2211 code, even with a new patient relationship, because obviously you're establishing care. This is expected to be an ongoing longitudinal care related to this specific serious condition. Another example is say you have a patient that has osteoarthritis and you decide that you are going to do a shot, an injection at the time of the visit. So say you do a 99213 with a 25 modifier on top of the injection. That is not going to qualify for a G2211 visit because that is using the modifier 25. And again, we said we cannot use the G2211 code when you have a modifier in place. And I should qualify a modifier 25 in place, right? So that's the specifics around when you cannot use this code. Another thing that is important to know is that CMS actually does not prohibit billing prolonged care when you're using this add-on code. So remember, prolonged care is all about additional time on the date of the visit and really is seen with those level 5 visits. Now, a G2211 is for the additional time and resources used between visits to manage care in the long term. So things like calls, staff work, prescription renewals, referrals, that is allowed on any level of a visit. So really, that's kind of the differentiation between, say a prolonged, time code and this add-on code that is really all about, hey, I'm managing this complex, multiple visits over time condition that the patient has. And so E&M values really don't account for those resources associated with a primary care or even a subspecialist who is managing those complex patients over time. And so that's really why having this option of an add-on code really helps represent the value of being able to say that this, that the office is managing those long-term issues with a patient. And, it helps to try and signify that these patients are different, right? It is different than dealing with even in a serious acute illness. There are different things that the physician and the office are having to do in order to manage that patient over time. So to reiterate, there are some examples of when adding a G2211 code would not be necessary. And that's things like a mole removal or treatment for a simple virus or seasonal allergies or the initial onset of, say, GERD. And, some other examples of when not to use this would be, an acute fracture when there really aren't other comorbidities or other things that you're going to be addressing over time. Those are examples of when this would really not necessarily be the code of use for this. So again, you're going to use this code along with those E&M codes. So that's your 99202 through the 99215, as well as you can use it alongside those telehealth or telephone calls that you're seeing patients with and doing, an evaluation and management visit in either of those modalities. And again, do not use this when you're using an E&M code with a modifier 25. So hopefully that helps kind of give you guys, some tools in your tool chest to start utilizing this code for the right patients. We all know that it's frustrating when we see cuts come around. It's frustrating when we see reimbursement decline. And so one of the best ways that you can arm your office staff is with education, looking at the new codes, understanding as much as you can about the codes that you use on a routine basis, and then having a rock solid billing team. If you guys are new to the RevMD podcast, we operate a full service medical billing and coding company called National Revenue Consulting, and we would love to help you and your office this year increase your revenue. We have over 15 practices, close to 60 doctors as of this recording. And we just love working with physicians, helping them improve their revenue, helping teach the office about issues that are, going on and helping educate so that everybody's on the same page and working towards the same goal. So if you are looking for a new billing and coding team, reach out at nationalrevenueconsulting.com. There's a contact us form, or email us at info@nationalrevenueconsulting.com. We have some testimonials that are on the website, so head over there to check out what others are saying about working with NRC. Have a great rest of your weekend, and we'll talk to you next week.